Hey people, it is Friday, March the 15th. It's currently 3:13 in the afternoon and about 11 degrees Celsius. And I'm looking south down Yonge Street from the corner of Isabella Street. So for this walk, I'll be walking along Isabella Street, heading east here. It's a mostly residential side street, but it is rather charming and interesting, and it does have some retail and restaurants close to Yonge Street here, as you can see. And it has a nice mix of old historic buildings and modern condo towers, all mixed together in a aesthetically pleasing sort of way. And a few well-known establishments, such as the Artful Dodger here. And you can see some of the towers of Young and Bloor rising behind. And then after I walk along the length of Isabella Street, I thought I'd double back on another pleasant residential street and then walk through some alleyways heading south down to Carlton Street. So this will be a bit of a pleasant residential street walk and an alleyway walk here on the east side of downtown. Looks like this is for sale. This area is heavily dominated by high-rise apartment buildings with some older low-rise walk-up apartments mixed in, and some old Victorian row houses and semi-detached houses. Most of the apartment buildings in this area, though, were built in the 1960s and 70s, and they have this sort of slab commie block look to them. Here's a more charming older walk-up apartment. That was probably dating from the 1920s. And this is also the Church-Wellesley Village neighborhood, the center of Toronto's gay community. Wellesley Street is just a block to the south of here. And we're approaching Church Street up ahead. And there is a brand new addition. That building is just wrapping up construction, joining some of its other recently built neighbors. That's on Charles Street. It's another very mild, pleasant day. And we're in mid-March now, so spring is just around the corner. It's been feeling like spring in the city for the last several weeks, though, other than a few odd cold days here and there. And I meant to say Wellesley Street is a few blocks to the south, not one block to the south, but it's just down that way. The heart of the neighborhood. And there are some major development proposals along Isabella for some very tall residential towers that will definitely alter the skyline in the north end of downtown. In some cases, they'll be demolishing older apartment buildings such as this one and replacing them with a new tower. Get a look at this development notice over here. In this case, a 62-story tower. And in cases where an already existing apartment building is on site, slated for demolition, tenants in this existing building will be guaranteed a apartment in the new building, paying the same rent that they're currently paying. The only thing is, of course, during construction, they have to be relocated somewhere else before they can eventually move back. Another nice old walk-up apartment here. And I think there are a couple more examples as we continue on the street. Another one right here, as a matter of fact. This sign is a bit worse for wear, but 69 stories. But I think this old historic mansion here will be preserved and incorporated into that development, so that won't be demolished. And with good reason, because as you can see, this is quite the magnificent old mansion here. Definitely from the late 19th or very early 20th century. Isabella Arms Apartments. And the sun keeps hiding behind clouds, but then reappearing again. Approaching Jarvis Street. Let's look south. And there's Casey House across the street, another old mansion that became, I think, Canada's first AIDS hospice. This looks to be a newer build, but it fits in fairly well with the existing streetscape for a low-rise residential. If you can't mimic the look of the old historic homes, I think something like that is quite suitable. The sky is looking a bit ominous over in that direction. Crossing Huntley Street. The guy's wondering which way church is, and I don't think the people he's asking really are too sure themselves. Right, I think there are more development proposals just up ahead. Another old apartment building here. And just like we saw previously, this one will be demolished and replaced with a much taller tower, 69 stories. So, same situation. No doubt when people moved into these older buildings, they probably never imagined that one day the entire apartment building would be torn down and replaced with a bigger one. I live in an older apartment building such as the ones we've been looking at here, but I can only hope that that won't happen. It would be nice to get a guaranteed spot in a brand new building, but it's what you do in the construction period that is the concerning part. But my building is on a otherwise purely low-rise residential street, and my building is the tallest by far on that street, and it's not very tall, just about as tall as the one we were just looking at over there. And I highly doubt that a really tall proposal will be, even considered for that block I live on. That's the way I see it. Let's hope I don't eat my words. And Isabella Street ends right here at Sherbourne Street. And here are the towers of St. Jamestown. So it doesn't take very long to walk along the full length of Isabella. So I'm going to head south a block, and then we'll take a walk back to the west along another residential street. And here's one of the Freshco grocery stores that I frequent. There are about 3 other grocery stores closer to my apartment though, so I don't come to this one as often as those other 3. This is about a 13-minute walk or so from my apartment. Remember, I timed it one time. Whereas I do have a couple other grocery stores that are less than a 10-minute walk, even one that's more closer to 5 minutes. So just a Brief jog south here on Sherbourne. I'm quite fond of this old apartment building. And this is Earl Street we're currently walking west along. And that dome is Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church. And some beautiful old row houses here. These are 19th century vintage. And this is a newer build here, but as I mentioned on Isabella Street, these ones are also built in a very appropriate style to fit in with the existing street, sort of mimicking an old classic row house. Although they just don't have quite the charm of the actual real deal here, if you were to compare them. Complete with an Eiffel Tower here. I mean, they're all right, but you'd never mistake these for actual historic rows. And here's where Earl Street sort of ends as far as vehicle access goes. And then on the other side here, it's called Earl Place. This one's just called the Earl. I like it. Can't go wrong with a fire escape. I think the first season of Kenny vs. Spenny was done from here. In maybe this building or the next one over. The Glendale Mansions. But then in the second season they relocated onto Sherbourne Street just south of Gerrard and spent the rest of the show from that location. Now here, these aren't very old. I'm not sure exactly what year these were built. Maybe in the last 25, 30 years at most. And they're already slated to be redeveloped here. It's a 58-story tower. back at Jarvis. And Jarvis, as you can tell, is just a wide traffic funnel for the most part. It does have some charming buildings along it, but the vibe is a bit ruined by all the rushing traffic and extra wide street. But after crossing Jarvis, this street changes names and now it's Gloucester Street. That's just one of those things Toronto likes to do. They like to change street names randomly after crossing an intersection. Same street, different name. You'll find that all over the city. It's a nice old historic semi-detached homes. This one seems to have 4 units here. One has 3 units. I mentioned before in previous videos that people mistakenly label these areas as being low density single family home neighborhoods in the heart of the city, but if you look a little bit more closely at these homes, you'll find they're not single family homes at all, often containing multiple units, often being attached, often in rows. These neighborhoods are the very missing middle that people are sometimes mistakenly decrying as missing from much of the city. You have to get quite a bit further out away from the core before you find truly single detached home neighborhoods. And even those homes that do appear to be a single detached home often are subdivided into at least one other unit, sometimes 3 units. And looking south on Church again. like this one, the Gloucester Mansions. You can see all these homes are attached to one another here. And up ahead is Yonge Street, but I'm not going to go quite that far. I mentioned I'm going to walk along an alleyway. First, we'll take a shortcut through a park here as we pass by Bumpkins. So this is part of a linear park which runs parallel to Yonge Street, and the subway line runs underneath this linear park. That's mainly why it exists the way it does. This section here is under refurbishment, so it's temporarily not accessible, but we can walk through here. I think the park has different names depending on what section you're walking through. I know one of them is called Norman Jewison, named after the late filmmaker who was from Toronto. Not sure what this one is called. I see a sign up here. Why not? We'll just go take a quick peek. Maybe this is the Norman Jewison part. Nope, it is... Oh, this is just a... Okay, so James Canning. I don't see a sign though saying James Canning Park. We can assume that that means that that's what this park is. And Yonge Street, just a stone's throw right over there. But let's start walking along these alleyways here heading south. I wonder if I could get up on that rooftop. Oh, it looks like that fence is preventing you. Here's a great shot. The backside of some old commercial buildings on Yonge Street, looking all gritty with the fire escapes and graffiti. And towering new condo rising behind. That's pretty typical Toronto these days. Here's Wellesley Street. There's Wellesley subway station. Right over there. So let's continue on. Yeah, nothing sketchy about a guy wearing a ski mask in the middle of the afternoon on a mild day. Got a car coming behind me. So quiet I could barely hear it until it was literally right behind me. And that's right, Yonge Street is just over yonder. So I'll continue south through there. Let's just take a quick peek over here. I want to see the progress of this building site. A new tower will be rising here. I think they're in the excavation phase right now. I think it'll be around 40 stories. And we have a flock of pigeons. You know, sort of checking me out as I check them out. They don't seem too fazed by the camera. Yeah, it looks like digging is well underway here. Already several levels down from what I can see. In Toronto, most residential towers have underground parking, usually at least a few levels of underground parking, sometimes as many as 6 or 7 levels, depending on the size of the building. So it can take quite a long time after construction starts for the building to actually rise above ground. First you have the digging below ground phase, which can take a while, and then building back up to ground level. And only then will it start to rise above ground. Sky Gilbert Lane. This is Buddies in Bad Times Theater we're walking past here on the left. We're still on the edges of the Church-Wellesley Village. And I've shown this before, but Buddies in Bad Times is the largest and longest running queer theater company in North America. Founded in 1979, or it had its first play in 1979. And more historic information here. You can always pause and read. So I'm going to continue south. Quite a busy little side street here. I think this is Alexander Street. Looks like that old apartment building there is not long for the world. It seems to be all boarded up. We'll cut through the Courtyard Marriott here. This hotel is actually slated to be redeveloped also, with a very tall tower. Sort of losing track of how many buildings we've walked past which will be demolished and replaced with new buildings. Just in a bit over a half an hour of walking. And believe it or not, I believe this building is also slated to be redeveloped. How do I know this, you wonder? I am a member of a forum on the internet called Urban Toronto, which tracks all the new developments in the city. And I've been a member of that forum since 2007. Toronto skyline when the first TD Centre Tower was under construction. It looked like the monolith from 2001 compared to the existing cityscape at the time. Got the former tallest building there for a few decades, Commerce Court North, at 34 stories. That was built or completed around 1930-31. And this was completed in 1967. Still under construction in this photo. And it was 57 stories at the time. By far the tallest building and the first true skyscraper in the city. Over 150 meters. In that case, it was over 200 meters in height. But within a few short years, several other new office towers sprung up around it. and it suddenly didn't look so out of place. Now there are many buildings in the financial district taller than that first TD Center Tower. And we emerge onto Carlton Street. So I just need to go to this Shoppers Drug Mart store right here on the corner of Yonge and Carlton. That was sort of my destination coming out today, and I thought, let's get a nice walk video in while I'm at it. Killed two birds with one stone. And I quite enjoyed this walk today. I hope you did as well. Leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And also make sure you hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my videos. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description where you can do so via PayPal, as well as via my merch store. Or if you prefer, you can support the channel in other ways, such as becoming a channel member, or by sending a super thanks. And you can find me on Instagram under KContinuum. So thanks for watching, and be sure to keep checking back, because as always, I will continue.